Hi there, welcome to Drick's room. My name is Drick. You know, I kind of felt like I was just in the middle of summer and I blinked and all of a sudden it's October. Honestly, time doesn't feel real anymore, so what does it matter? Anyway, since we are well into October, that means a lot of you guys are in the thick of your college applications. To all of you guys, good luck and do your best. Since everything in the world is so weird right now, everyone's going to be in very different places along their journeys of applying to colleges. Some of you guys may be nearing the end of your applications and some of you guys may be just beginning. Today's video is going to be more geared toward people still in the earlier stages of applications. So if that doesn't apply to you, you can click away from this video and go back to whatever it was you were doing. Bye! For those of you still here, today we're going to be talking about application deadlines and timelines, which are going to look very different for every school. You guys may have heard of things like RD, EA, REA, ED, rolling admissions, and so on, and wondered what they meant. That's what I'm here to explain to you guys today. I'll be giving you guys a pretty brief overview of what each timeline is and how they differ from each other. So, let's get to it. In terms of application timelines, they're usually split into two groups, the early round and the regular round. Let's start with the early round because it's earlier. First, we have early decision, which is often abbreviated as ED. Early decision is, as I mentioned, part of the early round. With ED schools, you'll usually apply by the beginning of November and hear back from them around December. But the specifics of that are going to depend on whatever school you're applying to. When you apply to a school ED, you have to sign a binding agreement that essentially says that if you are accepted to that school early, you have to commit to that school. You are making your decision of where to attend school early, hence the name. In some very specific cases, it is possible to get out of an ED agreement, but that is usually reserved for financial reasons and other special circumstances. When you apply to a school ED, your ability to apply to other schools will, again, depend on the school you're applying to. Some schools allow you to apply to other schools' early action and some will not. In most cases, you can only apply to one school ED. But as per the ED agreement, if you do get into your early decision school, you have to withdraw all your other applications and attend the ED school. If you aren't immediately accepted ED, you can either be rejected, in which case you're just done with that school, or you can be deferred, which means that the school will reconsider your application during the regular round. If you get deferred and accepted in the regular round, usually it's no longer binding by that point, so you don't have to attend that school if you get in regular. Students may want to apply to school early decision if they're 100% sure that they would attend a certain school if they got in, and also have the means of doing so. If you aren't 100% on a certain school, ED may not be the way to go. So if you want to apply to schools early but don't want to get roped into commitment just yet, certain schools give you the option to apply early action, also known as EA. Just like early decision, early action is part of the early round, so you'll usually apply by the end of November and hear back from the school around December. One of the main differences between ED and EA, however, is that early action is non-binding. This means that if you get into a school that you applied to EA, you're not under any sort of obligation to attend that school. As the name says, under EA, you're taking action early, but you're not yet making a decision. You're also pretty free to apply to as many schools EA as you'd like, but there are some caveats with ED and REA. Like with ED, you can be either deferred or outright rejected. Getting deferred is kinda like a school telling you that they might want you, but they gotta see if there are better people they could take first. Students may want to apply to schools EA if they want to hear back from certain schools earlier in the year, but still want to keep their options open in terms of what school to attend. Similar to early action, but also slightly different, is restrictive early action, also called REA. Some schools will also call this single choice early action or SCEA, but it's basically the same thing, just in more words. Restrictive early action as a whole is basically the same as early action in most regards. You'll apply by early November and hear back around mid-December. You're not under any agreement to attend, etc. The main difference between early action and restrictive early action is that restrictive early action is restrictive, hence the name. This means that if you apply to a school REA, you can't apply to other schools EA or ED, with some exceptions. REA restricts your options in terms of private schools, but usually you can still apply to other public schools EA. For example, if you wanted to apply to Harvard early, you'd have to apply REA because that's the only early timeline they have. Since you applied to Harvard REA, you wouldn't be able to apply to other private schools like Yale also early, whether that be EA, REA, SCEA, or ED. However, you would still be able to apply to a public school like UMass early action. Hopefully that makes sense. And once again, with REA, you can either be deferred or just completely rejected. Generally, people who apply to schools REA are applying that way because they want to hear back from a school early, but that school doesn't have early action. If you just look at a particular school in a vacuum, so if you pretend other schools don't exist and only focus on that one school, EA and REA are basically the same thing. Some schools will also have things like EA1, EA2, ED1, and ED2. They're literally the same thing as regular EA and ED, but repeated. For example, if you apply to a school ED1 but get rejected, you could apply again ED2 or EA2, either at that same school or another school that offers the same kind of timelines. As usual though, the policies surrounding these are going to be more specific to individual schools, so you'll want to look at your school's website for clear deadlines and the like. To be honest, I don't really get why schools have multiple EA and ED timelines. I've heard that it's because schools want to increase their applicant numbers, but honestly, who knows? I just wanted to put this out there in case any of you guys are interested. So, yeah. After the early round, we have the regular round, which really only includes RD, or regular decision. Regular decision schools usually have their deadlines around the end of December or the beginning of January, which means that it's pretty likely you will have already heard back from your early schools at this point. Then you'll be hearing back from your RD schools throughout February, March, and April. Regular decision is non-restrictive, so you can really apply to as many schools as you want. If you want to apply to 27 schools like a certain someone I know, I wouldn't recommend it, but the possibility is there. If you aren't immediately accepted into a regular decision school, you can either be rejected or waitlisted. When you get put on the waitlist, it means that the school kinda wants you, but not really. You're like a backup option to them at that point. So if someone who got accepted decides to turn down the offer, a school may pick someone up from the waitlist and offer them acceptance instead. Students who apply to schools regular decision may do so because they already applied to certain schools ED or REA, or they may just want more time to work on their applications. Outside of either timelines is rolling admissions, which is also known as... Actually, I don't think this one has an abbreviation. Rolling admissions isn't really part of the earlier regular rounds because rolling admissions takes place basically during the whole year, depending on the school. Applying through rolling admissions is also non-restrictive and non-binding, so you can apply to as many schools as you want. They have really flexible deadlines, and usually you'll hear back a few weeks after submitting your application. Students who apply rolling admissions may do so because the school they want to attend works on a rolling basis, or they want to enter university outside of the usual time frame. Rolling admissions offers a lot more flexibility, which gives students more options when they're applying to colleges. As you guys can see, When it comes to admissions timelines, you have a lot of options to choose from, depending on what an individual school offers, of course. I'm not here to tell you guys whether you should apply ED, EA, RD, or whatever, because that's a pretty personal matter that really only you can decide on. I'm just here to sort of help inform you guys so that you can come to your own decisions. But I will say one thing though, which is that there definitely is some strategizing to be done when looking at the early round versus the regular round. Now, I'm speaking from my own experience, so take it all with a grain of salt, but you gotta be smart when choosing to apply in the regular round versus the early round. If you want to apply to a school early, you gotta be really confident that you already have a super solid application and that waiting for the regular round wouldn't really change anything. Back when I was applying to schools, I made the mistake of applying to a school early action because I believed I'd have a better chance of getting in if I did so. For a lot of schools, early rounds see a higher acceptance rate when compared to their regular round, so it may seem like applying early gives you a clear advantage, but there is a reason why acceptance rates are much higher in the early rounds. Early round acceptances usually will include recruited athletes, which skew acceptance rates because recruited athletes are almost always automatically accepted early and aren't going to be deferred or rejected usually because they were recruited. In the early rounds, you also tend to see more legacy applicants and just super extraordinary applicants. So it may seem like acceptance is easier in the early round, but that's really because the applicant pool tends to be more competitive. Sometimes schools will even explicitly say that there is no difference between applying early or regular in terms of getting accepted. This means that schools will look at your application in the early round the same way they would during the regular round. So if you think waiting a couple more months can really help you improve your application, going RD may be the right move. You gotta be confident that your application is as good as it'll get if you want to apply early, because if you're deferred, you don't get a chance to revise your application. This is a lesson I had to learn the hard way, so please don't make the same kinds of mistakes I did. And on that note, best of luck to all you guys applying to schools this year. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, feel free to drop a like and comment down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!